Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm really excited to be here for our session right now. I'm very pleased to be joined by Eyal Grayevsky, the CEO and co-founder of Mya. And for those of you who don't know Mya, Mya is one of the leading recruitment automation platforms for hiring teams. They're probably best known for their conversational AI that many staffing firms and lots of other organizations have been implementing. So, Eyal, I'm really delighted to have you joining us right now.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Barry.
Well, it's one of the things that I really um, wanted to talk about a little is your background in the staffing industry. We have gotten to know each other a little bit over the last couple of years, and really think of you as as a technology disruptor in the industry, and in and around the recruiting and hiring process. But you've got a whole family background in the industry. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, I started in staffing. So, my dad's had launched a staffing business about 40 years ago based out of Seattle, Washington, focused on aerospace engineering. So, very niche, specialized professional staffing business. And that's where I, got this incredible exposure into the industry very early on. Got involved, as a kid, I was always interested in entrepreneurship and business. So, it was one way we bonded. And then I got a chance to work there for a couple of years, just to get some early experience before I entered the job market.
Right.
Um,
So were you one of these, like, teenagers who's like down at dad's business recruiting people on the phone, or doing back office work or something like that?
yeah, he's Israeli, so English is a second language. As soon as he caught on, I was good at writing emails and helping him through some of those challenges. I got involved, and I was always asking questions. I ultimately, through college, I worked as a recruiter, just to
Huh.
make some money on the side. That's where I got some of my initial exposure, and it was unique because I got to kind of circulate the office and learn the different functions and how the business worked, and then spend some time as a recruiter. So it gave me that first view at some of the challenges that
Right.
recruiters face.
Right. Well, I'm really I'm interested in it. And so what about the where did you come to the whole sort of tech angle on it, and um, start thinking about applying AI to the recruiting process?
Well, it started, as a recruiter. My dad's company was actually quite innovative in that they were one of the first companies to bring in technology. They have this matching capability where they would, run these sophisticated matches against the database to send emails and source candidates. So, I started to kind of wrap my head around that. And then when I left school and started searching for jobs, I was branching out into finance, which is what I studied in college. And I was just very frustrated with that experience and kind of seeing it from the job seeker lens, brought it full circle, and ended up starting my first business, first job. This was about 9 years ago. So that's really when I started to get into, starting my own technology business and, jump in the water and start to learn how to run and operate a business in this space. And then later, Mya came about, which I'm happy to share a little bit more about what inspired that. But that's really
Yeah.
my foray into
Right.
technology in the industry.
That's great. I am curious about Maya. I think about uh, you know, the 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 job seeker experience that often happens with staffing firms. And what we often hear from candidates is, that they reach out to staffing firms and don't hear anything, um,
Sure.
and that sort of they've been ghosted, or they're just not getting a lot of response. And I don't know if was it an experience like that that got you interested in the idea of using technology to provide some more conversation with candidates, or what really led to uh, founding the organization?
Well, we ran a job marketplace focusing on early career jobs, so entry level internship programs, which are often high volume. And we had millions of users in the platform. So we had this really good lens into some of the pitfalls of the candidate experience where they're not hearing back
Yeah.
very often. And then we saw kind of what was going on behind the scenes with our customers who were just dealing with this incredible amount of volume and an inbound funnel through, we had about 144 applicants per posting. It's just a lot of repetitive work that created bottlenecks. And then, often they would rely on the outbound model because they didn't find the quality or weren't able to fill the roles directly through the inbound application. So they would go out and spend a lot of time cold emailing, cold calling, writing messages through our platform, through other platforms. And it clicked. We realized that one of the biggest pain points and where the process typically broke down was in the communication and the inability to scale engagement. So we came up with Mya as a feature, and it took off for us. And then we had this big vision on how can we apply that technology and experience more broadly across the entire recruitment lifecycle.
So that really, it sounds sort of, you had your pivot moment there from, sort of focusing in more on the conversational AI aspect. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it was a feature, and then we ultimately, given the kind of the vision we had and the traction we were getting, the feedback from the market, we said this is the future, right? And we built this robust platform, automation platform that leveraged that feature, which became this robust conversational AI technology to power that platform. And so we did ultimately pivot away from the marketplace once that took off for us.
Right. And you guys, so you've really been at it as Mya since 2017 or so.
Yeah, so we raised our first institutional round in March of 2017, but we had started, we had the feature, kind of the MVP, late 2015. Believe it or not, at that point, I was looking, what is this called? I'd look on Wikipedia and say, oh, it's called a chatbot. I mean, it was very early in kind of the hype cycle of some of these chat-based experiences and interfaces. And then we started building it as a standalone product in 2016. And then we announced the rebrand and the Series A in March of 2017. So we were already at it for about a year and a half.
Right. Got it. Okay. So, I know there's been lots of progress and developments, and I think I'm sure you've had lots of interest from the staffing industry over time. But suddenly we come to the current crisis, and I'm just curious, what's changed for you guys since the world turned upside down the last couple of months, and what changes have you been seeing in among your customers?
Yeah, so it's a very challenging situation, and people are dealing with various difficulties, challenges. So there's kind of the people element and the business, how do you operate in this environment? So we've been very focused on, we're now working remotely. We have been since March 10th, so we made that decision pretty early in the process, and just adapting as a business. How do we keep people engaged? And it's been actually pretty remarkable how the company's responded. We have increased cadence around all hands, and different ways that we're creating fun ways to engage with our peers, colleagues, daily stand-ups, different ways to stay aligned. So overall, as a company, we had to adapt first and foremost, and also be thoughtful and sensitive to the fact that everybody's dealing with this a little bit differently, right? With kids at home, or the added stresses. So putting a plan in place to make sure that we're able to cater and accommodate, provide flexibility there. But it's actually been pretty great to see how the company's responded, and we haven't skipped a beat. So that's one side of the coin, and then from a business perspective, yeah, it's a different market. We were somewhat fortunate in that, from a business perspective, that we worked with a lot of high volume segments. So we have a lot of healthcare, we have a lot of light industrial, call center, IT. We do a lot of supply chain, distribution, logistics. So, we had some customers that actually started to pick up steam given their increased
Right.
needs. But then, of course, especially with large staffing businesses that have many different parts of their organization, they're really touching all areas of staffing. Obviously, a lot of the market's been impacted negatively in a
Right.
pretty serious way.
I mean,
Um,
you've really seen this situation where, I mean, thinking about the growth of your business, right? It was, such a candidate short market, and so I'm guessing that, sort of on one side of that, and now all of a sudden, unemployment's up at in double digits, well into double digits, and from record low levels. Um, so are there different challenges now that staffing firms come to you and say, like, they want you to try to, they see Mya as a solution for, for the new challenges that they're facing? I guess before it was trying to find the needle in the haystack. Maybe there's, you know, how has that changed, I guess, over the last little bit and what they're asking from you guys?
Well, certainly, a lot of the markets either slow down, pause, reducing because of the contraction and jobs have dried up. So, you're seeing a few things going on. Obviously, you have that small segment where they, have a lot of activity. They haven't skipped a beat.
Right.
But then, the broader market obviously is impacted negatively. So there's a few things we're seeing. One is when jobs do open up, there's much greater applicant volumes because what's happened is there's this influx of job seekers into the market. And we saw this, there's a lot of lessons to be taken away from the Great Recession. You saw, obviously not at this scale, but you saw a lot of kind of similar trends where you have this increased applicant flow often. And what we saw during the Great Recession was that time to fill and cost to hire actually went up.
Hmm.
And it's somewhat counterintuitive, but you open a role, all of a sudden you have this influx of applications. A lot of them are unqualified. So how do you sift through the noise? Companies may have a higher bar. They think, hey, there's a lot of optionality. There's a lot of great talent out there because of the high unemployment. So hiring managers holding out for, the best fit. And so, there's a bit of an appetite to be a bit more patient. So you have some interesting dynamics, and as the market rebuilds, I think that's going to get even more amplified. As jobs open up, people are going to kind of
Right.
take notice of some of the challenges that will present. But there's a host of dynamics that we're starting to see, and a lot of organizations looking also to drive cost efficiencies.
Right. I would think obviously that would be a big priority today. And if you've got an automation solution, that should be something people are pretty interested in, I would assume.
We are seeing, we're seeing trends, and I anticipate adoption of technology, automation, AI will actually increase. As we get into the later innings of this and the rebuilding process, we'll really start to see that accelerate. But even now, we're starting to see a trend where organizations are looking at an opportunity to, really streamline, automate, drive efficiencies. Staffing businesses looking to optimize around margins as revenue softens. And build for the future, because you need to be able to scale. There's this concept of elasticity to be able to really capture and capitalize on that demand when it arises, without having to rely on scaling up from a people perspective. So I think that there's an increased appetite for automation in the market, but we're in the early innings of all of this. So, it's up until this point, it's been a lot about, what's going on, how do I forecast and plan, and now we're starting to get into the mode where people are like, okay, let's strategize. Let's think about, how do we want to transform our business or pivot or,
Yeah.
plan for the future.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about that future. I mean, we've speculated a lot about what the role of a recruiter might look like in the future. And there's lots of folks who could imagine that artificial intelligence will like completely take over the job that recruiters do, and there won't be much left for people to do. And I'm wondering, you've sort of live in both worlds. So you grew up in the staffing world, sitting in a technology business now. How do you feel about what that future might look like in terms of uh, you know what the jobs and what staffing firms are doing and how they're interfacing with automation?
Yeah, so there's a spectrum, right? So as you go higher skill, you're going to have a little bit less room for automation, more relationship building, more selling, more um, you know uh, complex decisions. And then as you go down the other side of the spectrum, there's more room for automation, and we're seeing a lot of adoption and trying to streamline and accelerate the process, which benefits the candidate significantly. You apply to a job, and within 5 minutes, you're on the right calendar, for the right opportunity that perfectly fits what you're looking for. And within 48 hours, you've got an offer and you're starting to get a paycheck. I mean, that's a much better experience than waiting for a phone call to ultimately miss it during your day job. So we see a lot of room for automation there. And yeah, the future is bright for, I think there's a lot of room to drive efficiency and take away some of the repetitive work. But I am a firm believer that the recruiter is a centerpiece and a core function in this process. It's just, how do we prioritize their time? How do we use them in a really strategic way? And how do we augment them with richer insights, automated process,
Hmm.
streamlined, all the way through to the finish line, and maximize what recruiters do best, and
Right.
spend their time wisely. So, I'm a believer that the recruiter is important, but as you go down the chain in terms of hourly, high volume, there's a lot of room for automation there.
Yeah. Do you guys actually do you get involved at all with with like the online hiring platforms and things like that? Or do I don't know if just in general, if you have a perspective on that, but we talk a lot about the um, online staffing and this convergence between staffing firms and the online platforms and the sort of recruiterless world there. And where do you see, do you agree that all is going to sort of converge? And where do you see you guys fitting in that ecosystem as it evolves?
Sure. Yeah. So you have these kind of on-demand platform, like marketplace platforms, that are typically focused on a specific domain. They're often limited by the talent pool that they have access
Right.
to. And so you need that scale for that to really disrupt the market. But that scale is hard to achieve, right? I've been there. I ran a marketplace. And our philosophy is, how do we turn, you take a staffing business and they have this incredible pool of talent, often underutilized. Often you don't have access to a lot of the data. You don't know who's actively available. You're not maintaining that relationship simply because of the constraints that people have. It's hard to
Right.
do that at scale. So our philosophy is, can we apply that same principle and model to a staffing business and help them build that model, and deeply integrate it into their process, automate that engagement across their talent ecosystem to create that on-demand workforce. And that's been incredibly powerful, and the impact that has, is significant, and happens much more quickly, once you're able to apply that type of approach, to
Right.
those businesses. So that's the approach that we've taken. Though we do see some of those players as potential partners, and there's ways to bridge that gap.
Right, right. I would imagine that because you're sitting. You guys are. One of the things you mentioned earlier is talking about bringing richer insights to staffing firms or others who are using your tools. And I'm sort of picturing a world like you've got all this data, right, of interactions with candidates, and can you give us some examples of like the sorts of, when you're thinking about insights that come out of that, what sorts of things, do you guys find as you're sort of letting the AI run on all that data? I suppose it's not things that you always even plan for, right? It's just stuff that comes after you start seeing how all of that is evolving.
Yeah, it's an incredibly powerful aspect of what we're doing, because all of a sudden, for the first time, you have this visibility into every interaction end to end across your recruitment process. A, B, we're able to re-engage and maintain these engagements and relationships with the broader ecosystem. So we have a sense, we can reactivate profiles, enrich and understand who's available, what's their latest skill, what are they looking for, what are their preferences. So you have this view at the broader ecosystem and the availability of that talent pool. But also, as you're getting candidates into the funnel, where are people dropping off? Why are they dropping off? How do the different levers in terms of the qualifications you set impact the availability of that pool? How are you tracking against the targets that you're trying to meet? Do you need to generate new candidates to meet those targets? If yes, let's automate that into the funnel. You just get this this view at the very nuanced steps throughout the process that you didn't have otherwise, that were being done in a decentralized way across different platforms. So that's one thing. And then, beyond that, as you start to get into, how can you maximize the quality of the hire? There's a whole set of insights that we're leveraging to help inform and improve some of the decisions that are happening as well. So lots of interesting insight.
Yeah, right. Well, that's great. So talk about, I think everybody's interested in chatbots and in AI, in sort of applying that to the staffing process. Most folks in staffing, don't come out of a technology background. And so, you probably see a whole range of practices that companies are implementing. And I'm curious, what do you see as sort of best practice for the clients that you've worked with and how they use this technology? And maybe on the other side, what are some of the common mistakes companies make or missed opportunities that that they might leave on the table when they're implementing solutions like yours?
Yeah, I think, probably one of the first things that I think is really important is ensuring that, as you implement technology, that it works seamlessly with your existing systems and workflow, so that from a day-to-day perspective, it's really easy for the recruiters to use and adopt and benefit from. So it doesn't inadvertently impede on the recruiter workflow.
Right. They've got a whole lot of technology to manage now. I know we have a session coming up talking about the tech stack, right? And there's a lot of choices to make there. So say a little more about that.
Yeah, so that's really critical. And how we think about the implementation is, you want to look at, what's the recruiter steps. Sometimes there's some re-engineering, which selecting a partner that deeply understands how you can actually make those adjustments to unlock the most value and efficiency. And then how do you embed it in such a way that it is seamless for the recruiter day to day? So that's a big thing. Another important thing is understanding the pain points and the use cases and where you should implement this to drive the most value and impact And where, often I see organizations gravitate to maybe the wrong part of their business. So understanding where there's a lot of repetitive work, where you're seeing volume, you can see huge impact in implementing and that investment in implementing an experience like this. And then making it really easy to scale and expand. And so selecting a partner that has the configuration capabilities, the flexibility around workflow, and some of the capabilities readily available turnkey.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I think can that are important as you think about
Right.
adopting and implementing something like this.
Right. And any, so you touched a little bit on like common mistakes. It sounds like, applying it to the wrong area of your business to, to start. Are there other things that you would sort of caution staffing firms or key things they should be thinking about when thinking about implementing AI and conversational AI in particular?
Sure. Yeah, I think there's application across a really wide range of use cases and jobs, but there's certainly parts of the business that are going to benefit from it most. And then there's certain parts of the process. And so you have to really deeply understand what are the pain points, where are the inefficiencies that I want to solve, and design a workflow to solve that. And then you can expand outwards. So that's one thing we often recommend our customers to work with their partner to determine and identify the best path to implementing and creating the most value. Um, Outside of that, I definitely think that if you're going to drive engagement, say with your passive candidate pool, it is really important that it's done in a way that enhances the experience, doesn't detract from it. It's hard to engage a candidate through a conversational experience where you're initiating that conversation. You need to make sure that the partner you've chosen to actually drive those conversations has a lot of experience and richness in their ability to manage and facilitate those conversations gracefully, to create a really positive experience. Because what I've seen is you use kind of a basic yes or no, multiple choice chatbot, and it can be somewhat of a turn off. You want to reach out with a personalized message. Hey, this is Mya from Acme. You applied to a job 9 months ago. We have this opening that looks like it suits you really well. Are you interested in learning about this opportunity? Or, hey, you worked for us last year at the Google facility. We wanted to reach back out. We have this opportunity. It looks like a good fit. And then make sure that you're able to provide a rich handling against the various questions that might come through, or if they're not interested in engaging. So that stuff is really, really important. Often it gets overlooked. Hey, I just want to throw a chatbot at it. There is an art and a science behind how to do this, and it requires a lot of experience and quality technology to approach some of those more challenging use cases that can be incredibly impactful. I mean, it's become one of our most popular parts of the platform when you're seeing 40 to 60% engagement, just incredible conversion, but it's got to be done right. There is a right way of doing it. And so I just want to caution people to be very thoughtful in how that's implemented.
So let's look a little bit towards towards the future, and I think you're probably Eyal, you're probably well positioned to just think about artificial intelligence in the staffing world just in general. You guys are sort of sitting in one segment of it, but you know uh, AI gets talked a lot about in staffing is just sort of end-to-end automation of the whole process. If you look more broadly, like where do you see this going? Not just in your segment of the market, but like across the whole staffing world. Like, what are we looking at in the future of artificial intelligence as it's applied to this business? As we start to look out more, 3, 5, 10 years into the future. I know that's a big question.
Big
So
question.
take
Yeah.
any part of it that you want, but we're certainly, we care a lot about that, of like, you know, how, you know, what is sort of the upper limit of what can be automated, and you know, where AI will work across recruiting and staffing in general.
Yeah, we believe that there's potential for a far more efficient, equitable job market, right? And today it's very manual and inefficient. You apply to a job, you hear back 15% of the time. You often get screened out, not in. You're applying to 30, 40 jobs, waiting for a response. And if you don't get the job, you're going back to the job board, right? So it's very broken today. And we envision a world where you engage, you develop a profile, you get matched and connected to a job, and in 2 days you're in the right opportunity. You're interfacing with the right recruiter. You're you're on the job. I think AI can play a big role in that, and then for the next job, right? How do you, instead of spending 39 days on average between jobs, how do you reduce that down to 2 to 3 days because of the connectivity of the market, access to all the job inventory, a deep understanding of the individual and their progress in their career to connect them to that next opportunity. I think staffing businesses can play a huge role in creating that type of environment, largely because they have access to so many jobs.
Yeah.
They recruit for many customers, right? They engage with many candidates, and so they're in a very unique position to unlock that type of model. But it requires technology, and it requires rethinking how we approach the recruitment process, and it requires real change. This is step function change in the operations model. A more centralized approach. You apply to the job, and that candidate gets directed to the right opportunity versus having a decentralized branch model. So I think there's a huge opportunity to embrace technology, and for staffing businesses to really drive that future state.
Yeah. And so, well, that's great. How do you think that'll vary between and I think you guys work with a whole range of size of staffing firms. I know you work with some of the very biggest, and some of the small and mid-sized. I guess, what would be your advice about how to play in that world for like the smaller guys when they're thinking about how to use technology to be successful, looking into the future?
Sure. Well, the small guys are the most agile.
Yeah.
They have an advantage. They can create change much more quickly in their businesses. The larger players, it's a bigger effort. So, I think the small and mid-sized staffing business have a big opportunity to, be ahead of the game in terms of adoption of technology, being the first to submit the requisition, being the first to engage with the candidate, building, talent pool faster to win market share and to become a mid-sized larger player. So it's a big market. There's as you know, it's a very fragmented industry. So there's a lot of room to grow and win business.
Well, that certainly lots of folks are going to be focused on that. Eyal Grayevsky, I really appreciate you taking some time to talk with us about Mya. We're going to cut over in just a moment. We're going to go to some Q&A, but really wanted to thank you for coming in and joining us, and for chatting with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Okay, we're now opening up our live Q&A for you with Barry and Eyal. Barry?
Well, thanks, Adrienne, and hi, everybody. Yeah, please go ahead, and you can put your questions in through the question and answer pane, which you can access down at the bottom of your app. We'll try to get to as many of the questions as we can. We've gotten a whole bunch of great ones already, so I'm just gonna plunge right in. We got an international question for you, Eyal. This was a question about how does AI work with accents, language, vernacular, culture. I don't know to what extent you've been really just focused in the U.S. so far, but tell us a little bit about the challenges there.
Yeah, Barry. We actually now are live in over 35 countries. So, we have a lot of experience, across North America, Latin America, Europe, Asia Pacific, where there are different, vernaculars, cultural nuances that you need to take into account. So, we haven't taken that process lightly. We have teams dedicated to, how do you localize? How do you understand some of these cultural nuances as we develop these conversational experiences? The good news is that we have a lot of that already built into the system. We've been investing in that very early on, and as we roll out in a new market, we invest the time, and the customer is often a partner in that process. We have external resources that we leverage as well, just to ensure that we focus more narrowly specific use cases to really build up that knowledge base, and B, that if there's different languages that we need to support, different terminology, we operate in English in the US and Australia and England and India and different parts of the world. So understanding also the various vernaculars to ensure that the system is able to pick up on that. And we can also, there's ways and mechanisms for us to ensure that we're not kind of opening it up to risk early on as we learn and gather insights. But we do a lot up front in terms of training the models and incorporating that language and that vernacular and support of variations into the system before we launch. So.
Very interesting. I'm assuming it's, do you actually like identify the candidates based on their geolocation, or maybe it's you might have like a different training database, I suppose, of in different countries.
Yeah, so it's specific to the instance of Mya that we roll out, and in some cases there's also multilingual conversations that we, if we're engaging with folks in parts of Canada where French is prominent, we actually offer the candidate to opt into French at the onset of the conversation. Absolutely. I mean, we, as we go in, we ensure that the conversation and systems are prepared and designed such that it supports the different demographics.
Right. Great. Okay. We had a question here about the nurse staffing market. I'm curious how much work you guys have done in, the question was, can you discuss any work you've done along with any insights in the RN nurse staffing space?
Yeah, we have a lot of experience. So healthcare is one of our big categories that we've been supporting. We work with many of the largest and some mid-size healthcare staffing businesses, as well as large healthcare systems. So, tons of experience there. There's a number of use cases that have been really impactful. So, nurses are, a talent, hard to acquire talent. So what we're doing is we're helping engage and source nurses for our customers. So Mya can actually re-engage candidates in your database for any specific role that opens up, and vet them into the funnel, and does it at a really high engagement rate and conversion rate. We also do ongoing engagement of nurses and credentialing, different steps that require kind of ongoing touch points with the workforce. So we've rolled out a number of different use cases that have been really impactful in that space.
Right, and I assume in a niche like healthcare, right? They have their own language, right, and acronyms, and so you have to I assume you train Mya once on that. Each new customer doesn't have to retrain them on their specific use of the language.
Absolutely. It comes with the platform. So we have, conversation templates, inventory catalog of different types of questions, the specific terminology,
Right.
which we build into the system. So all that comes with the platform, and obviously selecting a partner that has done it before is going to give you a huge leg up.
Right. Very good. We had a question about best practice around coupling Mya with Bullhorn, and I'm guessing many of your customers have both.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are part of their tier 1 program. We're certified integration in their marketplace, and they're, a very important partner of ours. So, we've invested very heavily and continue to expand and differentiate our integration and ATS experience with Bullhorn. So that's something that can turn on very quickly as a result of the turnkey nature of the integration. There's also a lot of flexibility for some of our enterprise customers. We've built out some really cool combined offerings together. So, absolutely, to the extent there's folks on this call that are interested in Mya and want it to seamlessly work with the Bullhorn platform, that's something that we offer today.
Right. Okay. And is there any like very specific thing you would say like that's uniquely different about coupling Mya with Bullhorn than any other implementation that people would have to think about?
Yeah. So the the Bullhorn app is great in that it allows you to build custom capabilities and workflows. And as part of the partnership, we've developed for both of our products a set of integrations that are readily available. And the really unique thing is that, a lot of the configuration work, so if you're setting up a campaign or you want to run a match against the database and have Mya engage that candidate pool, you can do it very easily with one click directly from the platform. So, whether it's setting up outreach programs to set, forget, or, enable a job for a specific requisition for Mya to screen and coordinate, Mya can work directly into the calendar and in and out of the calendar within the Bullhorn system. Obviously, we support a number of other calendaring platforms as well,
Right.
with very seamless, easy integration. But it's very deeply embedded into the system, and you can actually set up from a day-to-day operations perspective. It's super easy and seamless.
Great. Okay. We had a question here on passive candidates. The question was, what's the communication channel to communicate with passive candidates? Must the candidate have the Mya mobile application? I know passive candidates are always, a high priority for people. So say a little more about how you guys go at that.
Yeah. So the really nice thing about conversational AI, one of the benefits of that user interface, is that it can operate in the channel that the candidate's already using. So they don't have to download an application. They don't need to create a profile or sign up for something. And we can engage them wherever they're coming, into the funnel. But from a passive candidate perspective, we support a wide range of channels. It depends on the market. Every market has slightly different dynamics from a consent perspective and which channels and how to engage. But SMS is a really popular channel in the US, for example, and it's been highly effective and convenient for the user. We can use email as a fallback, though we prefer some of these dynamic chat interfaces. And then we support things like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and various channels depending on the market. We'll leverage to drive up that engagement.
Right. Terrific. And I had a question here on what is your baseline client technical stack to best utilize Mya? In other words, what tools and data are needed before a customer can truly consider Mya? I assume the first thing would be to have a website, huh? But, what else do you need?
Well, frankly, you don't even need a website, because we can connect with candidates if they're coming from external job boards or other sources. We spend a lot of time just ensuring that we can capture candidates from, wherever they're coming from. We have text to apply as an option that gets them right into the conversation. So, but yeah, I mean, most of our customers have an ATS and, varying levels of sophistication. So, we can either integrate against that, and, we support most of the major ATS systems, just so that, they're managing certain, parts of the workflow directly from their ATS, and Mya is able to automate and kind of update information, work in and out of that system. But we also have non-integrated solutions that customers are using to actually run and operate a Mya experience throughout their recruitment process. So, there's a lot of flexibility there, but for the most part, we see, our customers have an ATS.
Right. I assume you would say that's integrating with your ATS is would you call that a best practice? I assume you would.
Yeah, I would. I think that's going to be the best combination. Again, especially if you're already using a system, you want Mya to really operate in the background and, feed it, your recruiters, candidates, automate steps of the process, manage relationships at scale with your talent ecosystem, source. But ultimately that candidate data, is going to fall back into your ATS, and where, you're going to have access to a lot of that ATS functionality that recruiters obviously can benefit from. So.
Just to clarify, Eyal, what's like the killer app? The first thing that people, staffing firms that are implementing this, is it just screening a candidate who applies for a job and finding out, what are their basic skills and their availability for an interview? Is that like the most common thing that that people first implement something like Mya that they're using?
Yeah, it's, there's a few things. So, top of funnel is typically where folks start. So it's either, engaging and having that instant conversation with every single person that's coming into the funnel, and then converting them across multiple steps of that process. So shortlisting, and then the calendaring process and post-interview steps. So that kind of initial engagement and then conversion through the funnel. And then, the other big one is re-engagement of large talent pools and sourcing, automating for specific jobs, and being able to, within minutes of the job opening up, have interviews already lined up that have been vetted for interest, qualifications, and availability. Those are some of the really popular use cases, but we're creating more flexibility to, to be able to expand into kind of other use cases that we're seeing are also starting to become, a hot topic in the industry. So more to come.
Yeah, very good. We're getting all sorts of interesting, very specific questions here. So maybe, you may or may not know this off the top of your head, but we had a question: does Mya integrate with healthcare source TSS?
I'm not sure off the top.
That might be a stumper, right?
Yeah, no, we have this really broad set of systems that we integrate with. We also have an API, webhooks, adapters that, an integration package that, our customers can easily tap into. And so, there's different ways in which we'll support, the data in and data out of our system. So there's a lot of flexibility there in terms of how we implement.
All right, and we'll pass that question. We'll pass that person on to you to get back to them offline.
Absolutely.
So let me, I'll go to a sort of a more broad question. We were talking about AI and chatbots. Gartner has this concept of the hype cycle of new technology, of sort of there's the early adopters, and eventually you get to the point where people think that it's going to solve all problems of all types, and usually after that there's then reality sort of sets in, and people realize it won't solve every problem, and you eventually get to some plateau of productivity. Where do you see conversational AI chatbots along that cycle, and and where's it going next?
Yeah, we've lived the whole cycle. We were one of the first to bring this to market, and so from the point where people didn't really know what it was and how does it work and does it really work, to lots of excitement and hype around the concept. But I would say we're still we're slightly past the early adopter phase, in that we're really starting to see adoption pick up, and a wider range of companies starting to catch on to the impact and benefits. But we're just scratching the surface in terms of the possibilities, not only in terms of conversational AI, but the applications of AI in general in recruitment and staffing. So I do think that we're just kind of in the, I would say probably like the fourth or fifth inning, but there's just so much more potential in terms of what this can do, and of course, if applied correctly. So we got a lot of exciting stuff in the roadmap that will continue to bolster that.
Oh, that's terrific. I like the fourth or fifth inning. I think a lot more to come. The final question is, talk about the next innovation, or where you guys are investing for the future. I'm imagining you could spend your money on helping existing clients just figure out how to use this better, or also investing in what the next generation of the technology is. And how are you seeing what the big challenges are to that right now?
Yeah, so we're very deliberate in how we use our resources, and we have a chunk of the team that's really focused on repeatability and scale of the existing platform. So we've got lots of self-service configuration templates that help scale, that are dynamic, that allow our customers to implement it quickly and be able to replicate it across their business quickly. So and then of course making integrations more turnkey, and some of the scalability aspects. So that's ongoing. And then we dedicate a huge part of the team towards innovation and continuing to deepen the automation capabilities within our platform, advancing the technology, and we've got new use cases that we're productizing in the platform to extend the value of what we can offer, and then better ways to match candidates to right opportunities and create more efficiencies, and for our customers that are adopting the platform. So it's a combination of adding features, functionality, kind of core technology, as well as extending the applicability of the platform to more use cases.
Terrific. And Eyal, thank you very much. I know we've come to the end of our time for this session. I know we have another session coming up where, for folks who want to learn more about Mya, to Eyal Grayevsky, thank you very much. I think a really interesting conversation, and really appreciate you being part of this.